Join the conversation with the Morning Majlis, Pulse 95.
Oh, a storm of anger emerged and stirred up yesterday in Jordan. It's the talk of the town, really. What happened yesterday, it was really dramatic, and it was really sad. Six coronavirus patients died yesterday in Jordan after a medical oxygen outage at the main government hospital in the Jordanian city of Al Salt occurred. Now, the deaths prompted Health Minister Nazar Abeidat to resign. Prime Minister Bashir al-Khasawna also said that Abeidat, a professor of medicine, was fired. And not only that, this prompted King Abdullah II of Jordan to visit the new Salt government hospital west of the capital Amman to confront the hospital director after those deaths occurred. And a video of King Abdullah's confrontation with the medical directors at the hospital went really viral overnight amid the widespread anger and outrage in Jordan following the incident. And during the confrontation, you can see King Abdullah, he could be heard angrily asking hospital director Dr. Abdul Razak al-Kashman, why had there been an outage of oxygen? And an aide of the king then points to Al-Kashman to adjust his face mask, which was covering his mouth but not his nose. Later on, Al-Kashman has resigned alongside three of his deputies. At least 5 hospital employees were also arrested following this incident, according to resources.
Yeah, the anger was palpable. Crowds of people had gathered outside the hospital denouncing what had happened and saying it's criminal negligence. And that's what prompted the king to fly over to the hospital. Now, according to the latest report, the death toll is at 7 individuals. And in the video footage of King Abdullah confronting hospital authorities, he said, "How could such a thing happen? This is unacceptable." He was visibly angry and said things cannot be dealt with this way. Now, looking at the picture outside, there were 150 relatives of those who had passed away gathering outside the facility. And police and security forces were present at the scene, preventing them from entering the premises. And the number was quickly increasing. Now, during a news conference that occurred, Health Minister Nazar Abeidat said he, quote, bears all moral responsibility for the incident that took place at Al Salt Hospital, adding that the issue has now been resolved and that the patients at the hospital are receiving oxygen. So what exactly happened? There was an oxygen outage. Medical sources told news media that an oxygen cut started from 6 a.m. and lasted until 8 a.m., more than 24 hours, which prompted the hospital administration to seek help from ambulances and civil defense teams. Now, this oxygen failure hit the intensive care, maternity, and importantly, the coronavirus wards in the hospital. And witnesses say that when the oxygen ran out, they were forced to do CPR on their own family members to try and keep them alive. And when these people asked staff, the staff said, "We ran out of oxygen and we're waiting for a truck to come in and supply oxygen to the hospital." So the question is, why did they not have oxygen for this long? It's a critical period. It's more than 24 hours. Why was there no oxygen in the hospital?
Yeah, and as a result of this, Nazir Abeidat had to resign, and we've seen those footages. It goes to show that the severity of the situation is when the president as well arrives, when in fact the king arrives and says, "Look, I want no explanations and what's going on," and I mean there's no other reaction that you could do apart from just resigning and accepting that there has been a gross negligence from the hospital's behalf, because especially for oxygen as backup is so much required, because you've got COVID patients in your hospital and you know that it is the most vital gas required to keep your patients alive, and if you're running out of it, there should have been a contingency plan in place, and if there's none, then it's definitely the fault of the senior leadership within the medical industry as well.
Yeah.
5 officials from the New Salt Hospital have been ordered to be detained 1 week at a correctional and rehabilitation centre over 7 counts of charges of causing death by association.
And the deaths also point to the fact that the hospitals in Jordan might just be overwhelmed by the COVID-19, which has surged in recent weeks and prompted authorities in the country to reimpose restrictions, including an all-day curfew on Friday, the day of rest and prayer. And the country has reported more than 465,000 cases and some 5,200 deaths during the pandemic. It is currently amid a vaccination drive with plans to inoculate more than 4 million residents in 2021. Over this weekend, Jordan received 144,000 doses of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine delivered through the global COVAX initiative, which targets lower and middle income nations as well. And the European Union has also allocated 8 million euros to support Jordan's purchase of vaccines as well.
Definitely, the government, or Jordan, is definitely facing a surge in COVID-19 infections. Just, I believe on Thursday, the government announced 8,300 new cases of COVID-19, and that's a big number for a country like Jordan. It's particularly small. And that is the highest daily number of cases since the coronavirus first surfaced in the kingdom a year ago. And not only that, Jordan is in recession and unemployment is officially at a record high of almost 24%. And the economy has been stagnant for a decade, and the coronavirus has definitely deepened the country's economic problems, also reducing domestic demand and remittances as well as revenue from tourism. So they're not in their best situation at the moment.
Not at all. And in line with that, what we'll do is we'll quickly move on to the world of news headlines. We'll be back again right after that. You're listening to the Morning Majlis on Pulse 95.
Join the conversation with the Morning Majlis, Pulse 95.
Yes, you can join the conversation. This is a conversation that you should join, in fact, because everyone has gone on their social media accounts, and everyone took part in giving their opinion about the Meghan and Harry interview with Oprah Winfrey, the controversial interview. Some people are pro Meghan, and some people are pro the Queen. This is the aftermath of this interview. People are now they're split into two groups: people who are against Meghan and people who are against the Queen. And one question that was sparked actually after this interview, especially when they mentioned Archie, their son, and the royal family's comment about, or concerns about his skin color. Why isn't Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's son Archie a prince? That is a question that was sparked after this. Well, when Prince Harry and Meghan Markle announced the birth of their son Archie back in May of 2019, the couple, they claimed that they had chosen not to give their son a royal title. So Archie would simply go by Master Archie Mountbatten Windsor, without a prince, without an earl or a lord prefix given to most direct descendants of the Queen. But in their recent interview, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, they alleged that it has not been their decision after all. Their son was actually denied a royal title even before he was born, possibly because of the color of his skin.
Well, it's not. A lot of people would have just, when they watched that interview, especially when Meghan Markle delivered that statement that he will not be given a title, a lot of people thought, "Oh my God," because Prince William's children have the title. So
Right.
there's a lot of the immediate thought would be, hang on a minute, that is outrageous. Well, let's clarify in terms of what the situation is. The reason is, as per King George V's order, which was done a while ago, way over a century ago, that
1917.
only those in direct succession to the British throne, such as the children and grandchildren of the monarch, could receive his or her Royal Highness title. So that means Prince Harry and Prince William got it because their grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II, is the monarch. Now, Prince William's children do not get the title by default.
Right.
Because they're the great-grandchildren. They're not the direct grandchildren of Queen Elizabeth II. But after Queen Elizabeth II would be King Charles, who would take control. So Prince Charles's grandchildren would then get the title. But there's also the rule of the direct monarch being or being in line with that to be entitled for such a role. So this is why Prince William's children were given that title after a decree signed by Queen Elizabeth II.
Well, what's troubling about what the Duchess of Sussex described about those conversations, which she said Prince Harry relayed to her, she didn't just say those conversations strictly entailed whether or not Archie would get the title. She said that there were concerns and conversations about the color of his skin. And that is the critical element here. She said this was relayed to her from Harry, that those were conversations that the family had with him. And she said, I think it was really hard to be able to see those as compartmentalized conversations. So it wasn't a strict conversation about whether or not Archie should get the title. She said there was a racial element brought onto the fore, and that's what makes this really tricky.
And in response to those racial comments, Buckingham Palace, they had said the race issues brought up in this interview were concerning and will be addressed by the family privately, but it had added that some recollections may vary. And that was probably the only response that came out of Buckingham Palace. And also, we saw that the Queen made I believe, an appearance at a school through video. After the interview, through a broadcast video, a virtual event to mark British Science Week. And Her Majesty, she joined experts and children at this video call, and she was just, brushing off everything that happened after that interview.
The interview is certainly getting a lot of traction, and another troubling aspect of this is that Buckingham Palace seems to be retaliating in a bit of a standoff against Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex. They're reportedly bringing in an external independent legal firm to carry out an investigation into claims that she, Meghan Markle, bullied royal staff, according to reports. A marked escalation of the standoff between the two parties. Markle responding, asking the palace to see the documents, emails, or text messages relating to these supposed bullying complaints as well. So things are not over. Tensions are certainly mounting from within.
I mean, that's one of the reasons why we're talking about it as well. And, a lot of people might be thinking, why are you guys still talking about it? It's because it's going to boil up, because this is not normal. Now, the other thing is the royals are going to make public appearances. That's the duty. That's what they have to do to keep the morale of the country up and running, and then to keep the royals in the limelight. Prince William attended or visited one of the schools over the weekend. Now, there's a protocol. Reporters are there. Photographers are there. They can only take pictures. No questions are allowed to be thrown at the prince. The royals. This is just generic protocol. We face it in most countries where when a monarch is there or someone from the royal family, you just don't break that protocol. The protocol was broken, and this is what happened. And even if the protocol is broken, let's say in Australia, whenever they're visiting, they never respond to the press questions. And this is the question that one of the reporters had thrown at them.
Sir, have you spoken to your brother since the interview?
No, I haven't spoken yet, but I will do.
And can you just let me know, is the royal family a racist family, sir?
No, we're very much not a racist family.
So that's Prince William responding. And this is not normal. Princes don't respond. They don't respond to press, and they did. And it just goes to show how it has deeply affected them. Now, I watched that interview over the weekend. I wanted some time to spare 2 hours and watch that video, the interview itself. The big bottom line answer was that there was the race element was discussed. And when Prince Harry came on and Oprah Winfrey asked him that same question, Harry said that this question very much was asked, and I cannot reveal who asked me this question, how they asked me this question, because it certainly is going to damage them.
Right.
That's very, very intense in terms of, so it must go to show they must have been a very, very close family relative. He did clarify it was not Prince Philip and it was not the Queen. Could have been someone within very, very close to them, so they were affected by it. And one of the biggest factors that they did decide to step back, as they describe it as, is when they tried to seek help, they could not get the help. Everyone quotation, is everyone in the institution or is trapped by that institution. Everyone in the family is trapped, as they try to describe it as. But it'll be very interesting to see what happens after this.
Certainly, Abdul Karim, and the situation, and especially the question from the reporter, highlights how the situation's struck a nerve with the British public, especially with people of color, and certainly got a lot of people talking as well about the history of the royal family and the things that people get caught up in, even unintentionally, being part of a particular society or a class or a race, as Meghan Markle would put it. But we'll continue to follow the situation, but we're certainly seeing an escalation within Buckingham Palace as well. Reports about Meghan Markle's purported behavior. So both sides are shooting back at one another. But from what I've seen, this situation has ignited a conversation that no matter where you're from, if you joined a royal family, there are issues that continue to haunt society, and that's what people are discussing, whether or not they're media narratives, whether there is accuracy to these claims. All of those specifics are still being debated.
Still being debated, and there's another question that's popped up in a lot of people's minds saying, okay, then why was Princess Diana given the title of the princess? She wasn't given the title of the princess. Princess Diana was referred to as the princess predominantly because of the position, because Charles is still the Prince of Wales, and she was given the Princess of Wales title, but she was never referred to as Princess Diana as the title on its own. So that is another clarity that people should be getting. But stay with us on the Morning Majlis. We'll hopefully keep you posted about other big developments. We'll just take a bit of a break at the moment. Harry Styles is coming up next here on the Morning Majlis to keep you entertained, and then after that we shall discuss the big story related to the Bitcoin rising again. $61,000 mark has been crossed as well. So stay with us. This is the Morning Majlis on Pulse 95.
Pulse 95. Between local lines. Notes from the Emirates.
Hey everybody, good morning. Welcome back to the program. And let's talk about schools here in the Emirate because we've got a new decision from the schools that no school in Sharjah is allowed to conduct 2 exams in one day. That's according to education authorities in the Emirate following a complaint to Sharjah Radio from a parent who reached out to His Highness Sheikh Dr. Sultan bin Muhammad Al Qasmi, member of the Supreme Council and ruler of Sharjah. She said her child's been struggling to study for 2 exams that were scheduled for one day, and Muhammad requested that the Sharjah ruler urgently speak to the student's private school as she thought the practice was unfair. She said this on the Sharjah Radio program, according to a report by an Arabic daily here in the Emirates.
Yes, and Ali Al-Hosni, director of the SPEA, said that their team had swung into action and stood with the students, and the authority discussed the matter with the educational institution and also clarified that no school should hold more than 1 exam per day. And it also reached out to the mother to explain the actions that had been taken to resolve the issue in response to her concern.
Looking at the complaint, she says students won't be able to focus as they have to study for 2 exams. This affects their grades negatively and they're afraid of failing the exams. Good old parent. You should have been there when I was back in school. Could have raised the complaint back then because it was intense, to be honest. It is. I've been through it. I think specifically for GCSEs. And you do have multiple exams in a single day. So we had the morning exam, and then in the afternoon session we had another exam. So that the double exam papers were difficult to do. Imagine if we were told to do exams right now at this age.
I think what you guys did at the time was study way ahead of time.
Yes.
I think a lot of students here are accustomed to studying the day before the exam, which is why the notion of 2 exams in one day is not something a lot of people are used to. Especially here in the UAE. At least from my experience, I've gone to Arabic schools, American schools. It's not the same vibe as IGs and GCSEs and British system. So people are typically used to, my exam is tomorrow, I'll study for it. That's the time for it. So the idea of having 2 exams to study for in one day is not something that a lot of people are too comfortable with, I suppose.
I think it's a good tactic as well, because I've done it and study the night before would be the biggest revision. But yes, we did have, back in the school days, GCSEs, we did have a week off to say, okay, this is your revision week.
Yes.
And we did the revision week. In every school, the British schools does it. There's always a revision week, which is great. But for me, relying on that short-term memory was so good. I think it's so important to have on that, sharpening your short-term memory, because once you've done it with the examination, then you forget about it, it's okay. Whatever you wrote is gone. It's in the past. But I think it does work. A lot of teachers are against it, saying, how dare you? Do not just revise the night before. You're going to be under so much pressure. But the fact is, your brain will remember it more if you do rely on your short-term memory. Do you think so? Do you agree or disagree?
I think.
Well, I'm a very bad example because I used to wake up extra early the day of the exam, and I would study at the day of the exam. Yes, and then I would feel guilty. I'd be like, why am I doing this to myself? But then somehow the information just comes easier. Like
Yeah.
I can recall the information easier if it's the same day, even though experts, they studied this and they said, no, this is not right. If you every single day, if you, for example, like today you went to school and you had your lesson, if you just revise your lesson the same day and you would repeat that every single day, and then you study it, let's just say 2 nights before the exam, and you revise everything, that is the most efficient way to answer to remember everything.
And it varies based on the individual as
Exactly.
well. So everybody's different, and also your level of involvement within the classroom is different.
Exactly.
So while I did the same thing you did, which was study the day before the exam, I remember being very alert during class. I always took notes.
Oh.
So constant notes. So when I left the classroom, I pretty much had it in my mind already.
Right.
So when I came to study the day before the test, I pretty much knew the material beforehand. But a lot of people, they don't pay attention in class. They
Yeah.
get spaced out. For those people, it's probably not a good idea to start going through the material the day before the
Yeah.
test. So it varies from person to person.
That's
Definitely
right.
does. But what was the longest examination that you guys have taken?
The longest in terms of the actual test?
Duration, yeah.
The
Probably the
duration?
SATs.
The SATs.
You did the SATs.
Yeah.
So it's like there's a writing test, there's
Yeah.
a math test.
How long was it? 2-3 hours?
I don't remember. The thing is, there are 3 tests,
Yeah.
and you have a long
No,
breaks in
it's
between.
probably 2 hours. Maybe like I think it's 90 minutes, and then
Okay.
you have breaks in between. I believe that.
That sounds
Yeah,
so bad.
it's
So
like
let's just say 2 hours max.
I had a 3-hour exam straight.
Oh,
My hands were dying. at the
Oh,
end of it,
goodness.
like literally dying. Because I remember it was 3 essays. Good old Roger Stevens building in the
yeah.
University of Leeds. It was a great time. But I was doing my examination on British politics. I didn't do that well at the results, to be honest. But I was doing a lot of the essays, and you had to choose 3 essays from a choice of 6, topic of 6, and you had to write and write and write in 3 hours. Oh my days, my wrist still hurts to this
They don't
day.
give you breaks at all?
No breaks.
Oh,
3
no.
essays. Got to finish 3 essays. 3 hours, and it was horrible. And then I just didn't take that module ever again. I was like, no, that's it. Done. No, not required. I wrote too much about Tony Blair and Gateskill as well. So there's too many things that I had to write. But yeah, we're done with it now. We've moved on, and we speak now instead of writing too much, which is good. So we will be continuing that discussion as well. Do get involved if you've got any wonderful memories from your examination halls and your examination days. My biggest fear were the invigilators who would be walking around, who'd be parents of different students and just walking around.
Or you're being cheeky? Is that why you're worried about the invigilators?
They just look daunting. They were parents I knew, and then they just look scary.
Oh, yeah, they do.
On the exam day, so that's what happened. But no, it was good news back in the days. But do stay tuned to Past 95. We shall return right after this break, and we'll continue the discussions from there on. Stay tuned, and up next we are talking about the world of sports. Here's a bit of Dean Martin to keep you entertained this morning.
If you liked this episode of The Morning Majlis, drop a like and subscribe.
95.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram for all our daily updates and top stories.
Pulse.